I am Greta, a dance artist, and also currently doing my PhD at the Center for Dance Research at Coventry University. And today I will share with you some of my recent research outputs that emerged as part of my ongoing practice-based research about developing artistic methods to recreate touch-like sensations online or remotely. This research began during the COVID-19 pandemic. My practice as a dance artist usually heavily relies on touch. However, because of physically distancing measures during the pandemic, we were no longer able to integrate touch in our performances. And I started to look for other creative ways to touch people from a distance during performances. And even though the pandemic is now luckily mostly over, I noticed how relevant my practices and research is for people who cannot or do not want to engage in direct physical contact, but who would similarly benefit from the positive effects of effective touch. And so I started to question, what are creative approaches to re-engage people with their sense of touch remotely or online? And in order to find answers to this question, I started a practice-based PhD at Coventry University and the Center for Dance Research, with the aim to develop different artistic approaches to engage participants with their sense of touch online or remotely. But let me give you a quick overview of the points that I will discuss today. First of all, I will introduce you to my research topic and give you a bit more of background information. And afterwards, I will share with you some of the results of my recent systematic literature review. And moving on, I will present the results of my expert interview study. And finally, I will explore my current and ongoing practical research projects. Before I move on, it is also important for you to understand how I define touch as part of my research. I find myself drawn to the philosophical insights offered by Karen Barat. Her philosophy challenges traditional perspectives on touch, and she invites a more nuanced understanding. In the realm of my research, touch becomes a conduit for meaningful and relational experiences over distance. It is an active engagement that delves beneath the surface, and it aims to cultivate connections that embrace the complexities of the relationship without neglecting the physicality involved. Rather than transcending the body, I acknowledge the integral role of the body in the experience. Now let's explore why recreating touch-like sensations and connections online is crucial. First of all, even before the pandemic, many people couldn't participate in physical contact activities due to disabilities, sensitivities, or personal preferences. Remote touch experiences can provide inclusivity for these individuals and also allow them to engage and feel part of the community. Also, as technology evolves, there are new avenues for creative expression and interaction. My focus is on developing accessible methods using existing platforms rather than expensive technology, making them practical and affordable to everyone. And finally, these methods have potential applications beyond our current needs. For instance, they could revolutionize telehealth sessions for manual therapists, overcoming the challenge of physical distance. And so the impact of these methods could extend to various touch-based fields in the future. Let me now present the results and background for our recent systematic literature review. Here you can see the title. In the beginning stages of my research project, I recognized the importance of understanding how all fields that use touch as part of their practice have adapted their practice to the new online format during the COVID-19 pandemic. I wanted to explore if their working methods could be transferable and inspire my own practical research afterwards. With the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, touch-based practitioners faced unprecedented challenges in maintaining their practices while adhering to physical distancing measures. Our review delves into the innovative strategies they employed to ensure effective and meaningful experiences for participants, even without direct physical contact. Let's move on to the search strategy and the results. We did a systematic search in 6 databases as well as a gray literature search, as we wanted to include all touch-based fields ranging from health practitioners to artists and therapists. We screened 918 articles and included only 17 publications finally in our review. This was relatively little. However, most studies would not mention their creative approach at all, in adapting to the online format, or the adaptation was not seen as creative by us. Most of our included studies were conducted in the US, and the majority were case studies. Also notably, 70% of all included studies specifically mentioned the lack of touch as a barrier when delivering sessions online. We chose to do a thematic synthesis, which is an approach that mirrors thematic analysis, and we identified 5 key themes, which you can see here. These themes represent unique approaches to online creative working methods. For example, theme 3 was adapted working methods to address no touch. Here, most practitioners utilized self-touch exercises to address the absence of physical contact, but some also used visualization techniques, imagination, or even sense to remember certain sensations. And we also explored participants' and practitioners' experiences with these innovative methods. Let's focus a little bit further on these creative methods. One example that stood out for us was from a paper regarding online couple therapy. Here, the practitioner chose to include a foam roller during an online session, and she asked one of the couple to stand on top of the foam roller, while the other one's task was to support that person. And we believe that this was quite a creative way of using objects in people's home, but also to foster trust between the couple. Apart from exploring diverse creative working methods, we've also pinpointed crucial factors for the successful integration of these methods into treatment plans. First of all, it is important to set clear expectations and to explain new creative working methods to patients before online sessions, especially in healthcare settings where patients may have specific treatment expectations. So it's important to clearly communicate and to ensure that patients understand and are open to using creative methods. Also, it's essential to consider the varied healthcare context in which practitioners operate. Public systems may face time constraints, limiting the implementation of creative methods, while private practices or longer public sessions or digital therapeutics may be more receptive to these methods. And finally, it is important to seek guidance from experts in different fields when wanting to adapt field-specific methods. So for example, if you want to incorporate breathing exercises into your treatment plan, it would be advisable to reach out, for example, to a yoga practitioner in order to make sure that the technique is applied correctly. Our systematic review revealed that very few touch-based fields have creatively adapted the in-person session to the online format during the COVID-19 pandemic. But these innovative methods really enriched participants' experiences, particularly in these challenging times. And however, after having completed the systematic review, I was still quite unclear how artists specifically had adapted their practices to engage participants with their sense of touch online. Therefore, I started with an expert interview study about artists who had adapted their working methods to recreate online multisensory works during or after the COVID-19 pandemic. Usually, multisensory performances aim to engage multiple senses and create immersive in-person experiences for participants. I was interested in how artists recreated such experiences in the online realm and thought that some of the approaches might also be useful for the development of my own practices later on. For that reason, I reached out to 6 international artists from different fields, such as dance, theater, and music, who previously created multisensory performances for the online realm. One artist which took part in my interview was Erin Mee. She's the artistic director of This Is Not a Theater company in New York. She developed many different multisensory works during the COVID-19 pandemic for remote settings. She chose to deliver these via pre-recorded audio tracks. All of her plays were site-specific and/or multisensory, meaning that the play's setting is part of the play. In Bathtub 2.0, for example, participants were instructed to run a bath, make a cup of tea, bring a washcloth and all props to the bathtub, and to light a candle. During the audio recording, participants were invited to create a dance with their fingertips on the water surface or to sip a beverage, making the experience a layered sensory experience. Another artist I interviewed was Lea Marujovic, who is based in Berlin. Unlike Erin Me, she chose to create a live performance delivered via a telephone called 1-800-Longing for It. Leah Mororovich collaborated with the London-based Mass Hysteria collective. Participants can book a slot with one of the 12 performers to have a late-night one-to-one conversation on the phone. Each experience was uniquely developed by one of the performers and differs in essence. For example, one performer pretended to be the chocolate in the listener's mouth, while another invited their listener to have a glass of wine together from the comfort of their own bed. All performances aimed to recreate a sensual experience using voice and language to make people feel touched, yet only through the voice. The experience of the works being live and taking place in people's own homes late at night added a sense of intimacy because participants were able to respond in real time and directly influence some of the experiences. I really wish I had more time to discuss the other performances as well, but I hope that these two examples gave you a good enough idea of some of the really creative ways of working these artists implemented in order to recreate multisensory experiences for people online. And finally, the methods and approaches shared by the artists during the interviews served as a great inspiration for my own practical research phase. Inspired by the outcomes of my recent systematic review, as well as the expert interview study, I decided to start with my first practical research phase together with other artists. The research methodology I employed in this study is rooted in the practice as research model. This approach involves an iterative process that encompasses doing, reflecting, reading, articulating, and doing again. I work with both practical experimentation and with theoretical exploration, which enables me to delve into existing literature while also applying artistic tools in practice. At this point of my research, I felt quite screen fatigue, as I had spent a lot of time in front of my screen doing the other research. And also when meeting with my collaborators, we all agreed that it was difficult to focus on other senses when looking at a screen. This is why we decided to develop audio-recorded performances. These performances had the specific aim of re-engaging participants with their sense of touch and connection remotely. Here you can see some of the images on my website. Each image, when you click on it, would lead to an audio recording made by one of the 7 performers. Each performer created a short 15 minutes pre-recorded audio track, which would engage participants in different activities throughout their home. Each performance would integrate different types of touch, including affective touch, discriminative touch, imaginary touch, or imagined social touch, to re-engage the listener with their sense. All of the performances were place-specific, so they would happen in a specific location, for example, on people's beds, around the dining table, or inside of a dry shower. I have now chosen 2 audio recordings that I would like you to experience today. And I have chosen these specific ones as they can be done from the comfort of your chair, so you do not have to move around, and it makes it easier for this conference. And I will share with you just a few moments of each recording. The first recording is from Deborah, and she focuses on imaginary social touch in her audio recording. She's trying to replicate a sense of co-presence with the listener, like we heard already today before in a different presentation, and perhaps you notice some of this in the very few moments that I will share with you.
I want to take us on a journey together, a journey where we both can connect to one another, although we're kilometers apart from one another, a journey where we can move through time and space, where time and space doesn't matter, where our bodies become one with the place we are sitting in, where our bodies can sense one another, although we're not sitting next to one another, although we're not sitting on the same chair, in the same room, in the same place. I love being in this room and sitting in this chair.
This is the first example. Sorry, I have to keep them quite short. And then the second recording is one that I recorded myself. And here we will focus on self-touch. We will explore touching our face with our hands, and maybe perhaps you also want to join in. Feel free to do so.
Let's now start with gently mapping the landscape of our face using the fingertips of our hands. What different surfaces can you feel? What valleys are there? What landscapes do you notice? Climbing a hill, running down a waterfall, resting in a bird's nest, feeling the small feathers of a bird touching. These are some of the images that come up for me through the tactile sensations on my fingertips. What do you imagine? What images come up for you? Exploring the different surfaces of your face.
Again, quite short, but you're very welcome to do some of those recordings after the presentation as well.
Let's now start with gently mapping the landscape.
Great. Okay, so moving on, our next project was an outdoor sensory audio guided performance called Until We Meet, which we presented in August 2023 in Crystal Palace Park in London. To continue our research, we were intrigued by the prospect of moving beyond the boundaries of private spaces and to explore the dynamics of remote touch experiences in public outdoor settings. Each round, participants were invited to scan QR codes, which were hung around the park on different objects like trees or benches, and were invited to listen to different audio tracks. Each track would be specifically made for the location and would encourage the listener to reflect on their sense of touch and connection. Each performer developed unique audio recordings for the place they chose, thinking of different types of touch, about personal memories in relation to the place, and about connection to other people over distance. In total, 63 people attended the performance. And here now I have a short trailer of the event, just so you get a better idea of what we did.
Although we're separated by hundreds of kilometers, we're standing in the same space. We're standing in the same spot. A park in the middle of a city. Can you imagine that I am sitting or standing to the left of you?
Closing my eyes and listening to the sounds around me.
You may feel as well how the wind has weathered and that it's not very smooth anymore.
Just enough so that we can feel the rise and fall of one another's breath. Come out in front of us, as if we were able to touch one another palm to palm. Can you feel the energy between them?
And after the event, I had several discussions with both my supervisors and also some of the participants, and many of them recognized the potential advantages of our audio recordings for individuals coping with chronic pain. These recordings offer an avenue to engage with touch without requiring direct physical contact. For those living with chronic pain who may find direct touch challenging or struggle to leave their homes at times, these recordings provide a valuable opportunity to participate in their own time. And right now I'm teaming up with different people who experience chronic pain and connecting with groups like the Somatic Dance and Chronic Pain Network, as well as the Cloud Spotters Cafe, which is an online group for people living with chronic pain. And through our discussions with individuals living with chronic pain, I aim to enhance and customize our audio recordings to better meet their needs. One key aspect we've identified so far is the importance of providing choice throughout the recordings. This includes allowing participants to choose their preferred position, deciding which body part to focus on, and determine the level of activity or passivity that feels most comfortable for them. Their valuable insights and feedback have played a pivotal role in refining our methods so far, and currently we're in the process of developing new recordings with the aim of expanding our offerings to a wider audience of individuals living with chronic pain in the future. So this brings me to the end. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation today, and it is a really great pleasure to be part of this conference. And I'm also really excited to listen to the other presentations today and tomorrow. And please feel free to ask any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greta. And so we have a panel discussion in about half an hour's time.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about how to move between, or in fact exist across the more artistic side of your world and the more research part of your world. And I think you've provided a beautiful example of how, as an artist, you have brought a very, very new and fresh perspective of why we are doing what we do here as researchers. So I want to thank you sincerely for giving us insight into one way of doing that, of bringing those two worlds together so beautifully and elegantly. I'm going to open up the floor to any questions, and I have one from Asaf. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's lovely work. And it's great, also wonderful to do the literature review. It's very useful. It's a question I think we've been all been asking in isolation or having pieces of the puzzle. So it's great to have a connected. I just want, it's more of a comment and wondering what the moment in the, unfortunately the video was a bit cut a bit.
Yeah.
But the moment in the park was very striking to me. Like one of the first images, seeing people in a public space engaged with this really particular form of attention that the work brings. And I think beyond the, the kind of work, which I think would be wonderful as well to do with people with pain and so forth, I'm just wondering if you thought about the, the public intervention, political and otherwise impact of this kind of work when it's brought into the park with these QR codes, and it really changes the park. I wonder if it's something that people that were not part of it were commenting on. Did you get any kind of, it's very powerful to see that. We're used to it in a dance studio, but now all of a sudden seeing it in a public park.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's something completely different when, also when performing works in a theater setting. It's a very specific space to hold. But then moving outside into a public area where we had obviously a lot of people who just went to visit the park and had no idea that the performance was happening. And we had some very, astounding looks, and people were very surprised and intrigued. But the funny thing was, because the QR codes were hung everywhere around the park, even if you weren't part of the performance, people were able to scan the QR code and to engage in some of the recordings. So people who had no idea what this was about, and we saw a lot of them walking around, and random people scanning and just taking some time to listen to the recordings, which was really beautiful to see, actually. And we could also track how many people visited our website throughout the period of the performance. And we had over 600 people actually opening the website. Whether all of them actually listened to the recording in the end, I don't know. But we definitely, there was a lot of interest. And I think also it's really important for us, the recordings are, the language we use is quite accessible, and it's place specific, as I said. So it means that it happens, for example, one happens by an old pine tree. And it is about this specific location, and we talk about this specific location in the recording as well. So people from the public don't really need any extra information, what the research is about, or that it is about touch or anything like that. They can just listen to the recording and have hopefully a good time and a thoughtful experience. And I always think it's amazing if you can bring art into the public and kind of include anyone really into the experience. So also people who not really are used to going to art performances or art events, all of a sudden take part in something like this. This is really powerful, I think.
Anybody else? Peter?
thank you for the talk. It's exciting. Also that it's a bit different from the others we've seen. I appreciate that. And the literature research, the review was nice too. I was just wondering, because it looked like people did something they wouldn't have done in the clinic, for example, when adapting to the online context. Probably both for the artists and for the couples therapy, etc. I was wondering how much of that then circles back to the actual in-person clinic. So does it change the clinical practices or the artistic practices that are not online afterwards, and in which way? Or like, just wondering about, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for example, that's why now working with chronic pain participants, it's really important when developing the methods that you already start having that feedback and start working with the people you're actually developing it for. So yeah, that's really important, for example, for my research, because it's something really new. And so it was important to work with lots of different artists from different disciplines, not just from dance, but also from theater, and some people from music and visual artists who come and develop those methods together, because it's something that is, quite, for everyone, it was a really new way of working. First of all, most of the rehearsals happened online for us, and we're really used to work in the studio together and to develop movement material or other sound, anything like that is normally a shared in-person practice, and all of a sudden it moved online. So I think that it's important to constantly have feedback throughout, also from when we had some of the recordings ready, we already invited people to listen to them and to offer feedback, what works, what doesn't work, before we then actually had the performance outside. And yeah, I really believe that in any context, it's just really crucial to involve a lot of different voices already in the making, and have that feedback beforehand, so that when you then present it, you can kind of navigate the risk a little bit more maybe, and know, kind of expect a bit more what the outcomes might be, so to say. Especially also, we work with touch, so that's a very loaded topic. It can be, for some people, can be very emotional. So it's important to kind of navigate the risk beforehand.
In the interest of time, I'm going to thank you, Greta, for your time. I have just a follow-up on what you were saying. So the feedback has actually been very poor in the clinical, like the truly clinical domain. They decided, we can't touch our patients, so we're just going to talk to them a lot more and hone our talking skills. Right. So it hasn't necessarily gone positively in all realms, but I think if I understood your question correctly, you're trying to understand, like, whether we learn something and then integrate it more into that. So I was doing a research, a sort of a little research on touch in and touch as medicine, and it did not look good. Mm-hmm. But I will refrain from making comments on here, but we can have a chat about it later. But thank you, Greta, for your amazing talk. And as I said, a lovely example of how artists can lead the way. We have Asaf joining us live and virtually, because that is how we optimize using technology in this day and age. But Greta, thank you so much.